Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Model Train Technology and modeltrainman.com. I received an email a couple of weeks ago and then a customer called me. He said, do you have that Kato Milwaukee Road Hiawatha set? And do you have a lighting system that'll work on this? Well, as a matter of fact, I bought this about a year ago and I put our LED system into all of the cars and even put a sound system into the baggage car. But there was one car that gave me trouble, and that was the dome car. And here it is. It's a long stretch of dome. This car, the Hiawatha, was in the mid-50s that this car ran in the Milwaukee Road. And the typical boards that we have, which are 11.5 millimeters wide, are just too wide for this particular circumstance. So I studied this. In the past, what we would do is glue 0402s, very small LEDs, to the roof and run them down. But for this case, I just didn't think that was going to do. So we went back to the lab, talked to a few folks, and we came up with a dome N-scale dome LED board. And this fits right in the top here. And these boards are available now on our website. They're 5 millimeters wide, they have the resistors, and they fit perfectly on these special case dome cars. We actually looked through and researched all the other dome cars. Some of them are not nearly as long, and so you might think, all right, I need a shorter one. These can be cut. So depending on how long you need it, there are electrical tabs on both ends, and we'll show you in a few minutes how we did the installation. Now the other challenge here is that there's a small section of lower seats, and we wanted to be able to light them. Our normal board fits pretty well underneath there, but there's a short section here, and we wanted to have all the flicker controls for this, particularly because we're going to light the dome. So we used one of our smaller 124 millimeter light boards, and that fits beautifully inside. Now, in the course of doing all that, we also discovered there are a couple of cases where, for example, we didn't want to light this in the same way. But there was plenty of space back in here, and so we now have available what we call our nano board. This is a nano decoder board. It has all the same functions as this board, it just doesn't have any LEDs on it. And you can wire up the dome car dome lights, and you can also put on the rear lights. So you can, this is sort of a specialty board, and that will fit inside the passenger car and it won't be seen. So anyway, so that's great. At the end of this video, if you want to skip ahead, you can see the finished product with the lights on it and us controlling it. These are all of our boards, except for the dome board, come with DCC decoders. So you can control them, you can adjust the brightness, you can have the rear lights blink or stay on, a couple of different configurations there. So let's get started, and I'll show you how we put that together. Okay, so we have all the parts laid out here. We have this very narrow board. This is 5 millimeters, and this is N-scale dome car light board. And we made this because we keep installing in dome cars. And so here's the top of the dome car, and we needed something that was very thin. We could put our surface mount LEDs on, and that just fits perfectly inside there. And we designed it in such a way that if you needed to cut and make it shorter, you can do that. So it just, it's pretty thin, simple board. So that's what we have there. Then we have the light board, which will go and light the lower level. And that's how that fits. And there's almost no way. So in this case, so this is going to sit on top of here, and the distance, there were stays here, and they've touched this top surface. And so the light board is going to go in like that. And so as a result, we had to do a little bit of modification. We cut a little bit of a slot here. We ground down this little piece over here. You can see that. And this used to be up a little bit higher, so we shaved that down a little bit here. So not too bad, but you do have to modify that. Here's that whole carcass, which will go in there. Here's the other part of the dome and the other lights. Now, all of our light boards have auxiliary pads, and we put them in there so you can have rear end lighting control. And so that's what we're going to use on this, because this car will never be in the end position. In some cases, we have a certain place, maybe a hallway or something, we want an extra LED. And so there's an extra set of pads here, and they hook up into the mains. And so in the past, we used to knock off one of the LEDs, sort of burn it off. And now we just made that a whole lot easier. This is a 124 millimeter board. This is the shorter of the two boards. We have another board that's a little bit longer than this, 144, which is our standard passenger car board. But we felt that this was the right board. We're going to have some wires in there. Now, there are some cases, and we built we designed the dome car light, this long board, where we don't have this combination, or we don't want that combination. And so we just came out with what we call a nano board, and it's very small. It has all the same functions as we do on our standard boards. There are just no LEDs on this. We have the auxiliary pads and the standard pads. And this is designed so this would fit right inside the car. Like I said, all of the boards that we sell have decoders in them. So what we could do is have this board light the dome, and then another short board or some specialty LEDs like here. But it's all designed to fit into an end scale location. Now, this board also could be used in a building circumstance, and so we're going to use that later. But for today, we're not going to use this board, but I just wanted to let you know that's an option. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to use some thin double stick tape. Sometimes we use foam tape. We're just going to run it along here, and then we're going to use an X-Acto knife and just trim it up nicely. And we figured out the orientation. We've made sure we've lined all of these things up. So the power from the tracks, this is a Kato card, so they're already in the wheels pickups already have those. And so we're going to take take that assembly apart. There are two solder pads here, and those will connect to the power. And then on the left-hand side, as you're looking at it, we have the pads where we're going to solder this. We're going to shorten these length, but since this board could go either way, you want to make sure you get the orientation right and just lay out everything before you start working, all right? Okay, we've put double stick tape, the thin kind, like this, onto the dome board, and we've put it into the roof of the end scale car, and we put these clear plastic windows back on, and we drilled a hole right through this little section here at the end of the dome car. And I did this a minute ago, and we're just going to slide this part and just tug on those wires a little bit, and there we go. So, not quite right. There we go. So now that sort of snaps into place, and you can't see the dome is in there, and you'll see when the lights come on, but we made that very thin. And so anyway, that's the dome assembly, and it's perfectly sized for the, this is the Hiawatha end scale set, and this is the dome car, but this will work on any of the dome cars that Kato or others manufacture. All right, so on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to separate out. This is the truck and lower assembly, and what we did is we just took an X-Acto knife and popped these little brackets, just gave them a little bit of a push with the non-sharp edge, and this just comes off. And what we have here are a set of two brass strips that go down, and these are just held in place, and the trucks have a little brass piece that sticks up, and that's how the electrical pickup is. So what we're going to do is we're going to solder a wire onto the top of these, and then run that up through a hole, which we will put into this, and it'll be out of sight, so don't worry about that. And the hole in the bottom of the truck will be just right about there, right? Let me see if I can get this camera angle in here. Right in here. So here's the end of the truck, and then right in here is where we're going to drill. And there's not much play when in the truck, so don't worry about the wire. It'll be perfectly fine in there. We've done hundreds of these. So, okay, so let's go. I'll get the soldering iron out. We'll take these metal strips out, put a dab in there, and then connect up a wire. Be careful, by the way, when you've got a soldering iron around. We use a soldering station, so the nozzle goes into the little stand. This is plastic, right? So even if you touch it briefly, it'll melt the plastic. So we're going to take these out, solder them, and then reassemble them. And the hardest task of this entire installation is putting these little metal strips in. They're very thin and light, putting them back in and getting them to stay while we put all of the assembly back. But just a little patience and that'll work. Notice that there's a little piece of weight here. We want to keep that intact. So here we've soldered 2 lead wires. This is decoder wire, the thinnest you can get. Use as thin as you can get. And we soldered onto the top. I'm holding my thumb down on these 2 brass strips. If I don't, this thing is all gonna pop off. And there's an orientation to this, which I remember. You'll notice there's some slots in the bottom here, and those very conveniently fit our wires. So all we do is we get the, oh, I got the orientation wrong. And that one for that side, and that one for that side, okay? And then we're just gonna lay this thing, lay this thing on top and try to get all of it to sort of fit together. There we go. And just make sure those guys are in good shape. Yep. And just snap it in. And there you go. So that's all snapped together. Whoops, not quite. Let's see. So we're going to take it back to the bench and get that piece straightened out. But anyway, that's the idea. All right, we took it back to the bench and look under the glass, and I just didn't push it down far enough. So now you can see that that's firmly seated on both sides along this edge. And we've got our 2 lead wires, and these are going to connect to our decoder. And then, so we'll solder them in, give them a little bit of play. We'll tend to do it, we tend to bend it this way. So we'll pull these forward and then bend them back, right? And solder them, so the board's going to be like this. So you'll notice that the wires are sort of headed in towards the car rather than heading out this way. And that just helps when you seat the board. All of this just falls right into this little lower, oops, let me do it this way, this lower section. See that? Sort of like an accordion, if you will, or scissor lift. And then the wires are held out of place, so the board goes like that. And we'll do the same thing to connect the dome lights on this side. Okay, we've soldered up our light board. As I mentioned, we're pointing the wires away, and we're just going to flip this over. And as I said, just push those wires inside. Just get these inside the tabs. And this board is designed to fit in between the Kato stays, so it's pretty good. And then, as I mentioned, we cut out a little bit of the building to fit this in. So that's what it looks like. Now let's try it out. So put it on the track, and you'll notice that there's a blue light. We'll come back to that in just a second. I have power hooked up, and I'm going to hit F0. And we had the fade mode on, so lo and behold, everything is just working great on that section of N-scale track. Beautiful. Okay, so what about the blue light? All right, so when we test these boards and when I was inventing all of this stuff, I couldn't really tell all the time that things were going the way I wanted. And so the blue light, and I'm pulling the train off the track, that's why it's flickering a little bit. Let's go over here and I'll just set it. Okay, so this blue light tells you that there's power and the board is working. So let's dim down the lights. I'm doing that with the speed control. Isn't that cool? And so what you can do, if you really don't like it, you can take a soldering iron and knock that thing off. It's a little bit destructive. What I recommend is you take some black paint. Let me get that black paint. Very simple, flat black. And we're just going to paint over that. Doesn't do it any harm. And then there's no blue light. Now the other thing that we're going to do is I'm going to turn on the rear auxiliaries. There's a red light built onto this board. And so if we're going to light all the dome lights, we are going to have, and they're white, we are going to have to take the red LED off of this board because some math involved, but basically that'll conflict with the dome lights. So that's what we're going to do there. Let me just take this off the track and I'll go again and I'll paint that and then we'll be all set. So before we go on any further, I wanted to show you what the red LED looks like when it's removed. You just take the soldering iron and knock it off. And here is the blue LED painted with flat black. We just used a toothpick and dropped it on. And then the DCC inputs from the track, 1 and 2, facing backwards. Now I have the car set up to install or to solder in the dome strip. So that's inside here. And this is the connection we made a few minutes ago. And now we've tinned the wires and I want to zoom in and let's see if we can do this. Right there. Okay, so we've got the car on the rails connected to a DCC line. You can see a little hint of the blue light. So we've got power from the tracks going to this end. And then this end, we have the auxiliary pads wired up to our dome car. So the first thing I'd like to do is just turn on the main lights, make sure that they work, and they do. And we can fade up and fade down. I just like to make sure all the good stuff is working. And now we're going to turn on the auxiliary lights. And you can see that the whole dome car all the way down is nicely lit. I'm not going to move this around because it's just sort of sitting here precariously, but the next step is just to put these parts back, flip this board in, and then put this on top. And we'll show you that next. Okay, we've assembled the car, put it on the track. We haven't put the side panels on yet. Just want to do this one step at a time. And we're going to turn the main lines on, which in this case are the lower ones, and the dome lights on, and that just looks slick, doesn't it? So we're going to just put these sort of side panels on next, and we'll be finished with this. And we have a customer who said, can you please get me something to light my Hiawatha dome car? And so that's it. Using the small dome board that we talked about, this one's unpopulated, and using one of our regular 124 circuit boards, there you have it. It took about 15 or 20 minutes, and I had to keep stopping to do the video. So it's pretty easy. Like I said, the hard parts are just, since it's N scale, all the little bits coming back together, and those brass strips for the wheel pickups, but certainly they work. I know some cars have another brass strip. The Kato system has another set of brass strips that slip in. The method that I described to you and we showed you with the soldering the lead wire right onto the metal strip. We've done plenty of those, and that's just the best way to go. Let me see if I can lower it down a little bit so you can see inside the lower dining car area. So, yep. And actually, one of the things about this car is it has another area. Let's turn it around and get it on the track. There you go. So now you can see that lit area there. So pretty slick. And we're really happy with that. How that came out. So let's turn the dome lights off and the main lights off, and there you go. And here's the finished car. And we can adjust the upper dome lighting, make it very bright or not so bright. Save. And we can adjust the lower lights, maybe to make them balance with the upper ones a little bit. Pretty slick.